Greetings from London. This is Maryum, and welcome to the Star Moguls podcast. So, this is a series of International Women's Day episodes that you'll see in the next few weeks. And my next guest is the communication coach. She is a retired international hostage and crisis negotiator for over a decade's experience. So, she must have had some really interesting conversations. Let's speak to Nicky Perfect. Welcome, Nicky.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. It's great to
Well,
be
firstly,
here.
I absolutely love your name, Nicky Perfect, but perfectly suited for International Women's Day. So we've connected on Clubhouse. So it's a new social media app that literally is just audio only. And I was introducing everybody on the app because we are hosting an event on Monday, and I wanted to say, communication for me and style is so, it's so intrinsic because the way that we dress and the way we present ourselves, there's a perceived reality to how we look, and then there's a reality what we know and what others see. So, firstly, how do you see people? How does one see and perceive people these days?
That's an interesting question. So I do my absolute best not to judge people, which of
Yeah.
course we all know as a human being we do. We all know that between 0 to 7 seconds we make those first impressions very, very quickly, all subconsciously based on what we believe to be true, what our values are, and what our experiences have been. So even if I might remind you of somebody, or somebody might remind me of somebody, and we'll automatically be taken to a memory that's completely not associated with that person, but
Yes.
that we link into them because we're like, oh, hang on a sec, you remind me of somebody. So,
Yes. Yeah.
so we judge, but I think it's important to be aware that we judge and know that we do that and how we
So
can
we
manage
have
that.
this 7 second rule, and I
Yeah,
always say that it's first impressions definitely count. I'm definitely a believer on how we are perceived and instantly in those first 7 seconds, but I'm also a believer on lasting impressions
yeah,
because sometimes we aren't so confident in our first impression, but how you leave somebody is really kind of that feeling, and it is really a testimony of that conversation or that meeting.
yes, yeah, it absolutely is. And I think if you know that you're going to leave an impression, then you
Yeah.
can control the impression you leave. I'm a great believer in conversation and communication to me is the most powerful skill that we all have, and the most undertrained skill that we all have. We use it in every single day in some way, shape, or form, whether that's in the written word or whether than in the verbal word form, or even in a non-verbal way. And yet we're kind of taught. We're taught a little bit about talking. We're not taught very much about listening, and we're certainly not taught very much about how our brain works. And so understanding that, and understanding the power that you can wield almost when you are able to consciously communicate, you can leave people feeling incredibly empowered and valued and validated, or you can walk away from a conversation without even knowing that you've left somebody going, I don't understand. Was it something that I've done? What's happened there? What's wrong with them? Yeah, so it's an incredibly powerful skill that we have, and I'm a great believer, and I've made it my kind of mission to show people all the lessons I learned from the hundreds of conversations I was privileged enough to have as a hostage and crisis negotiator, and show them how they occur in everyday interactions and how we can improve our lives by thinking about the way we communicate with people.
There is an art to conversation, and I believe that it is a dying art. Conversations really create movements and relationships and companies, and they can change the world. So it is such a powerful tool that people, I feel, in this world that we are living in this short form, in this takeaway world, in this such a quick, literally 7 seconds and we can dismiss somebody.
Mm.
How can we bring back this art of conversation?
I think it's about being present more. I think it's about being conscious. So we know that our conversations and communication are mainly unconscious, and by that, what happens is we just say stuff and we don't really think about it, and we don't think about the impact. I think we also forget that our lives are all about us, and we're very selfish. But there is nothing wrong with that at all, because of course, who else is going to make you happy other than you? But what I do feel is that we don't consciously communicate anymore. And we are so sidetracked by so many things, you know, the vibration in your pocket, the vibration on your wrist, a ping going off, and suddenly we're distracted. Whereas we know that if you can be present, and I've seen, you know, I've seen this because obviously I've had an incredible life and an incredible journey. And so I've seen that when you're present with somebody, you can make a huge difference. And you can make that same difference by being present for 5 or 10 minutes with somebody in a day. We know in child psychology that if we're present with our children far more and just do whatever they want to do for a small period of time, that
Yes.
relationship becomes stronger and they're more likely to do what we want them to do later on in the day because we've had that quality time.
What is it that led you to this path or this career?
So yeah, I was a police officer for 31 years.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so I was in the Metropolitan Police in London. I joined very young. I was 18, so I don't have a very strong academic background. My dad was like, "You're not going to get your A levels, Nick, and I'm pretty sure you're not going to get to university." And he didn't say it quite as bluntly like that, but
Yeah.
he saw that you know, I went to school for a bit of sport, music, and hanging around with my friends.
Right.
And so he saw an advert in the local paper for the police cadets, which showed young people having fun, doing canoeing and abseiling and mountain climbing. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll have some. I get paid to do that. Perfect. I'll have some of that. Thanks very much. And I got in, and it was like being in the army for a year, which for me personally was the best thing that could ever happen to me, because it kind of helped me form a structure in my life. I didn't have a purpose. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yes.
And suddenly here I was, as a police officer then, after a year, at the age of 19, posted to South London. And I did 20 years. The great thing about being in the police is it has so many jobs within a job, if you see what I mean. So you
Yes.
can specialise and do loads of different things. And I was 20 years into my career. I was working in the firearms unit. So there was 7 women in a unit of 650 men at the time. And so
Wow.
I was working there, and so I was an inspector in charge of a team of 43 men. We had a lady who came to the unit who was a superintendent, so she was a couple of ranks above me. And she said to me, have you ever considered being, this is a conversation that changed my life, which is why they're so powerful. She said to me, have you ever considered being a negotiator? And I said, oh, I've heard about it. I've worked with them, being in firearms, obviously.
Yeah.
I've worked with them out when on response policing, but no, not really. And she said, oh, I actually think you'd really enjoy it and you'd be good at it. And she kind of took me under her wing a little bit and became a mentor of mine actually for the rest of my career. And so I applied, I became successful. A negotiation course is a very intense 2-week course,
Right.
where they pretty much strip you down of everything you know and then build you up bit by bit and help you to realize that the way that we communicate is all about us. And actually, when you communicate with somebody in a crisis, you cannot matter. It cannot be about you. There is a life to save.
Yes.
I was fascinated by this. And so I sat there on this 2-week course, exhausted, I have to tell you, because it was like we would work in the classroom 8 till 5, and then we would be doing live scenarios from 5 till 11 midnight. So I was exhausted as well. But I sat there and had an epiphany moment, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I love this.
Wonderful.
I really love this. And then so I put myself out, did loads of negotiations. And in London, there is a team called, which is the Permanent Hostage and Crisis Unit,
Right.
which then works with Her Majesty's government and works internationally as well as in London. There is only 6 people on it in the whole of the UK. And I was like, I really want to get on that unit. That's the job that I want to have. And 5 years after I became a negotiator, I was lucky enough to get on the unit. And that's how really my journey started. And then I was able to travel the world. I just did things that when I joined, I would never ever have believed I would have been doing. And it was just an incredible 7 years of my life doing.
Absolutely amazing. And life is all about challenges and difficulties. But as a negotiator, like you said, is there something that you can share with us that would be valuable for our audience, and maybe a skill that we can use whilst we are in a place of maybe a conflict or a conversation where we're feeling uncomfortable? and how can we maneuver that in order to kind of get a good result?
The most powerful skill in negotiation is being able to listen. So we call it the 70-30 rule. So I will talk 30% and I will listen 70%. And one of the most powerful tools that I learned as a negotiator, but actually as a coach and as a mentor and just as a human being, is super powerful, and that is reflective language. So it's about, remember it. So I'll give you and your listeners just some tips that you can put in your toolbox now, and you can use with people in your lives, in your teams, in your relationships. But when we use reflective language, what we do is we create an incredible amount of trust very quickly, because we keep the conversation about them and we don't make it about us. So I'll give you 2 examples. The second thing I would remember ask people to think about is, what is your belief system? Because your belief system will play out in how you communicate with people.
Right.
So I learned this very early on in my negotiation life. So I'm standing talking to a lady. Okay, she's standing on a building.
Right.
She has decided she doesn't want to live any longer and she's going to jump. So we're having a conversation. So her belief system is, nobody cares about me. That's her belief system. So she says to me, no one cares about me. And I'm like, I care about you. I really care about you. I'm here, I don't want to be anywhere else, because that's my belief system. My belief system is, I care about you right here, right now. You're the most important person in my life, and I don't want you to die today. So the reaction I'm going to get back is going to be an emotional one, because what I'm saying is in direct conflict what she believes to be true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is, nobody cares about me. So I get back from that, how can you possibly care for me? You don't even know me. Who do you think you are? You can't just turn up and tell me you care about me. And I'm like, whoa, hang on a second. I don't understand. What on earth have I done wrong here?
Yeah.
Now, if I had used reflective language and just said something along the lines of, you sound really alone. And what I've done in that simple change of a sentence is kept it about her, is I haven't made any judgment, and I validated how she feels.
How words are so important. Oh my God, that's completely changed that whole, even I felt it.
Yeah. And that then opens the conversation up for you, and people are more likely to trust you and actually go, do you know what, you get me? But it's the same with so people with kids. So say your kid comes home from school and they
lots of negotiation with children.
Yeah, I know, yeah. It's a whole new world. They've come home and they're not very happy, and you can see that something's happening. You're like, hey, what's up? And they say, oh, so and so said that I was ugly today. Now, as a parent or a carer, our immediate reaction is to reassure them and say, you're not ugly, you're beautiful, look at you. Don't just ignore them. Why would somebody say that? Just ignore what they say.
Yes.
Which is coming at it from our perspective again. But if we said to them, just reflect back and said, oh, so they called you ugly and that's made you feel really uncomfortable and sad. And then what we've done again is validated them as a human being and how they're feeling without trying to solve it.
Yes.
Get away, because we can never take away how they're feeling.
Yes.
But validate and value them. So that reflective language.
How powerful conversations and words are, and if we use them correctly, or if we kind of get to as an artist, use words as like an artist, and use our whole body, because I when I'm styling, I like to use my whole expression, whole body and the words, and I feel that it should be an alignment of what goes on in here and outside, and how you present yourself. And you've probably made also a judgment call on what I look like, or what I'm thinking, or what I'm doing, because obviously on my appearance, because perception for people is reality, and they've made it this kind of, if I said to you, well, I worked for the prison service in Gloucestershire with as an IT teacher for a grade B prison, maybe that would change your perception. You will look completely different at me. I worked with within the education department helping disadvantaged youth, and worked for race equality. to my whole work is all about, uplifting and changing people's perception. And I feel that, the art of communication really has to be in alignment with what's happening on the inside and the outside.
Yeah, look, totally agree. It is, and it's interesting, isn't it? It's like you just said there that I would have made a judgment about you. Of course, I
Mm.
would have done. I'd have made a judgment about you as soon as you contacted me from Clubhouse. We
Yeah.
start that first.
What makes you decide that you want to do something? Like, how did you come to that? What is your creative process in that?
Okay. So yeah, we can't make people do anything that they don't want to do.
Absolutely. I've
So
learned that lesson.
yeah, we have to take them on a journey,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we have so there is a four-step system, a process,
Right.
just a very simple set of four steps, which is
Yeah.
initial contact. So that first impression, so that first conversation we had, which was just happened to be the written word,
Yes.
and how you come across in your written word. Then we start to build a rapport, which is we look for things that we have in common. So
Mm.
we start the process of what I call superficial tip of the iceberg conversations, that safe conversation.
Yes.
We only put out into the world what we want the world to see. We share those intimate details of our life, the emotional side of ourselves, with people that we live and trust
Yes.
the most.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's first impressions, building that rapport, then trust. And
Mm.
then when you have trust, which is the hardest thing to get and the easiest thing to lose, that's when you can start to influence and persuade people. But
Mm.
what most of us do is we go first impression, influence and persuade, without trying to build the relationship in between.
Yes. Yes.
And we can do that incredibly quickly if we listen to people and
Mm.
we recognize how they are feeling and also how we're feeling.
How do you change that perception about someone, like you said,
Mm.
from trust?
Yeah, to get them to trust. So yeah, it
Because
takes.
we are influenced, and these days, if career is all built on social media, because people usually say, they exchange business cards and they say, okay, we know they'll check out your website or whatever. But now everybody says, oh, what's your social media handle? Does one introduce or change someone's thinking in that?
Yeah. So I think with social media, and you're right, I am new to Instagram, and that's mainly because of Clubhouse. So
Yeah.
so I've started to make connections on Clubhouse. Most people have come to me before via word of mouth. I have when I left the police in 2018, I set up free sort of businesses all in one, which was a community hub, and so that took a lot of my time up. But I was still getting coaching clients, and now this year I really just want to spread the word about communication far more. And I realize that social media is a great platform to do that. So
Yes.
I think it's about being genuine. I think people, if if people find you out that you're not the person you're portraying yourself to be, then you will lose trust in a second. But
Yes.
if you show up and give people value and share who you are with them and what your story and what your journey is and what why you're doing this, what's your mission, what's your purpose in life,
Yes.
then and you keep putting that out to people, then you'll I believe you will start to get your traction and your followers.
When it comes to body language, what would you like to say that?
So I always say what you hear and say what you see. Now there's lots of research I know about body language, about words, about um, percentages of what they all are, but
Yeah.
it's I know there's been some research that says actually it's not like that. So I'm not going to cause a discussion around what's right and what's wrong. What I believe to be true
Mm.
is that if you can see a person, then you will have more idea of what's going on in their life. As long as you're present with them, you have to be present. You have to be listening to what they're saying. You have to be watching them and being absorbed in the moment with them. And then you can pick up things from them. Then you can see if somebody is there with you, or you can see if they're not having a great day, because they're feeling a bit like that and they're a bit like that, or you can see if they're having a good day. And
Yes.
so if we say what we see and we say what we're here, then we always keep that about the other person.
Mm.
Now, nonverbal communication is great if you really know somebody well. So if you know somebody well and you say to them, or you work with them and you say to them, hey, how are you? And they go, oh yeah, I'm great, thanks. And you're looking at them and you're going, no, you're not great.
Yeah.
You're not great at all. So it's whether the words and the action are congruent together. Now you take away the visual from them. Now all you've got left, say we're on the telephone, are the words and the emotion being expressed through the voice. That's what we have to go on. And then if you take that away and we're now in messages, now it's even harder to pick up what the other person means, because we'll take it from our perspective and our point of view and what we believe to be true.
Yes.
So, you know, nonverbal communication is great, and there are some amazing experts in the field specifically around nonverbal communication. But for me, it's if you know somebody, and it's about the congruence. So when they were doing the research about, I think it was like words were 8%, nonverbal was very high. When they were doing that research, it was actually about words and body language being congruent in an emotional aspect, not anything else. It was just the emotional aspect.
Yes.
So it's picking up on whether somebody is telling you they're okay, but actually they're not okay.
Yes, yes. Anything that you would advise and someone who's going for for an interview, and like even saying on Zoom, because you know we're not back in the world here in the UK, and many interviews are now being conducted on Zoom because their companies are thinking, well, why waste that travel expense or flying them across the country or internationally? We can just do a Zoom interview. How can we communicate better on Zoom?
Okay, so there's two questions there, I think. One is about interview,
yes,
but we're talking about particularly interviews on Zoom, because you're right, the whole world has changed now, and we're doing everything online, which is just amazing. Thank goodness for technology in this challenging time that we're facing. So there are a couple of things. One is when you feel out of control, it causes an emotional response. And when you have an emotional response, you go into a fear-like mode. And that can be all sorts of things: fears of looking stupid in front of other people, fears of getting things wrong, fear for your life, fear of a loss, whatever that might be. So if you can have more control over the situation, just, you know, if you think of a time when you were out of control, or there was a big change in your life that wasn't down to you and you didn't really want it, it's a horrible feeling. You know, you get those nerves, you get that uncomfortableness across the shoulders and the chest, and it's like, I'm not happy with this at all. So what can you do to have a bit of control? So a few things you can do is do some research on the company to find out what the company values are, especially.
Yes.
And actually, do your values align with them? Because if they don't, there's really no point in applying.
Absolutely.
Because you're never going to be happy in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that, you know, you do what you love, because there's no point to be miserable there, you know?
Exactly, yeah. So you just just check what company it is, and check the values. Also then check, Zoom is a lot easier, but you know, you can control you can't control if your internet crashes halfway through, but what you can control is being ready for the call. So you're ready for the call, that you've got yourself sorted, you're comfortable, perhaps you log in a little bit earlier so that you know that you're in the room and they'll let you in at all. Have your notes with you. Just have wear something that you feel comfortable with, but again, that aligns with the values of that other company. Some people will want you in a shirt and tie, other people won't, but they'll make a judgment on how you show up, how you turn up, and but they'll make a judgment based on where they're at in the company values. So just take a little bit of control back, do a little bit of preparation. Practice, that's the other thing, is practice what you're going to say. So we would always teach any negotiator, when you turn up at scene, practice what you're going to say, because it takes away.
I think that's a great, I think that practice makes perfect. I think that should be your slogan.
Yeah, it could be, practice.
I think you need to change it. Practice makes perfect. I think that's it. Nikki, I've got it for you. That's it.
My new tagline.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
It's perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfectly. So I'm going to be saying perfectly forever.
Yeah, just practice, and then you get more comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you can get somebody else to practice the other side as well, and give you some really honest and genuine feedback about how you've come across,
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a good point. Actually, having a practice run with somebody else on the other
Yeah,
side, and then actually seeing, does the technology work?
yeah,
Do you have your lighting right? And have you composed yourself properly?
yeah.
That's an excellent point. So we've got International Women's Day, and the theme of this year is choose to challenge. What would you like to challenge for 2021?
I would like to challenge being present with people. That's what I would like to challenge, of giving your time and actually the impact and the difference it can make. Because we are all so busy and we run around and we have all of our own internal chatter and we have lots of demands coming at us from all sorts of places. Actually, to be present with somebody, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, with your neighbor, with a stranger, with your team, with your family, and just be in that moment without any distraction. You know, it, you can, I can't even describe how powerful that is. And it took me a long time to work out how that powerful that was. And sometimes you
Yes.
don't even need to say anything. You just have to be there in the
Yeah.
moment with them.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Is there anything else that you would like to, that you've learned from your career as being a negotiator, and how you can apply it to life?
Yep. So, oh gosh, how long have we got? Because I could talk about this all day. But
Or as many as you
yeah,
want.
the three most powerful lessons I learned from the
Yes,
conversations I had are that we all have a story, and what we show to the world is literally the tip of the iceberg. And that we will have other things going on. So if you encounter somebody in an interaction whereby for some reason they are aggressive or rude, it might just be because that instant is the one thing that's triggered them today. You don't know what's going on behind that, the story that they're living.
Hmm.
So be kind,
Yes,
be
yes,
kind.
absolutely.
It's not, that's not about you, that's about them
Yes.
and what they're going through. So
Mm.
rather than retaliate with an emotional response, just reflect and go, oh, I wonder if there's something going on for that person.
Yes.
The other one is we all have a crisis at some stage. And when we're in a crisis, we come at life from a very emotional perspective. And that is not the same way that we come at, like, this is a lovely, logical, calm conversation.
Yes,
And
yes,
there's no emotion involved. And we are all incredible, unique human beings who have our own values, our beliefs, and our experiences. But what we all have the same is emotions. So we
mm.
all know what it's like to be lonely, what it's like to be disappointed, what it's like to be sad or angry or happy or whatever that emotion is. So when you're interacting with somebody else, just think about what they're displaying to you, what emotion they might be displaying to you, and just ask them if they're okay. Often people say to me, I never want to get it wrong. I don't want to say the wrong words.
Mm.
And I'm like, you won't. Just the mere fact that you have just said something to that other person, you don't know what difference that might make to that person's day.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you might actually be the only person they've ever spoken to that day. So,
Mm.
leave them with how you want to be perceived in the world.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and then and the third one is, I'm always going to come back to being present and listening, because it is just the most powerful skill that you can use with somebody, with that human connection that you can have with someone.
Conversation. Yes. Is there such a thing as a good conversation and a bad conversation?
Wow. I don't know that there is. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. So it depends. Okay, it depends. A conversation can be, let's call it awkward. A conversation can be awkward
Mm.
when the two people communicating are reading the message in a different way.
Right, right.
So someone will put the message out, you'll say what you think you're saying, and it's received by the other person in a completely different way.
Right, right.
And that's when you get that communication breakdown. And it's like, well, you told me to do that. And it's like, no, hang on a sec, I didn't. This is what I meant
Yes.
to happen. So that can be awkward conversations. And often people say to me, I don't know what to say in this situation. And I'm
Yeah.
like, don't say anything. Just
Mm.
reflect back what the other person is giving to you. And
Right.
because when you do that, what happens is you are the person they will remember.
Yes.
because you made them feel differently.
Absolutely. So, isn't it Maya Angelou who actually says that, you leave them with that feeling? It's more about the feeling that you leave rather than, it's how you make someone feel. And
Yeah.
ultimately, it's the emotions that we create. Like you said, I think first impressions, even lasting impressions, and the whole conversation, everything that we are is all energy and how somebody feels at the end of the day, and that's what's remarkable. Is there a conversation that was really difficult for you to have, that you've like you just, I mean, obviously not with work, but a personal conversation that you've had, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I have lots of personal. I'd love to sit here and tell you that I'm the best conversationalist. I'm not, because I'm an emotional human being. What I hope is that from everything I've learned is I'm far more reflective, and I really try to recognize what's happened in a conversation and why it's perhaps gone a specific way. I also know I'm an incredibly emotionally driven human being. I'm 53, so no, I'm 52. Gosh, I added a
increased your age. I never meant to do that.
Yeah. I have all those women things going on anyway, where all my hormones kick in and they're all over the place, and so somehow you have to find a way to deal with that. But yeah, so I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll give you my first ever negotiation that I ever did. Is I wasn't expecting to have to do it. I wasn't on call, and I was just about to go to bed one night, and my phone rang.
Okay.
And I could see immediately who it was. It was Steve, and Steve had been somebody who taught me how to negotiate.
Right.
So quite excited, I have to tell you. It's the first of something new. You have all these skills. Absolutely. You think it's all going to go brilliantly. Fantastic. Can't wait to get there. So he said, Nick, I know you're not on call, but this is like 10 minutes down the road from you. Can you go? And I said, yeah, of course I can go. Gosh, I was like, yes, let me at it. Let me at it. Come on, let's do this. So he said, so there's a gentleman who has just been released from prison. He's gone round to see the mother of his baby. And there's been a fight, and he has allegedly assaulted her. He's taken the child with him. The kid is like 2 months old. There's been a car chase around South London, and finally the car has stopped and it's surrounded by police officers. So I'm like, yes, of course I can go. Yeah, I'll be there in like a few minutes, literally. So I was like running through my head, as you do that internal chit chat, what was going to happen. So in my head, it went a little bit like this. Negotiator arrives on scene. She's able to go up to the car. He immediately looks at her. They start talking. She listens to him, hands the child over. He steps out the car, shakes her by the hand, and they go their separate ways.
Yes.
So all's going to be great. It's all going to be over and done with in half an hour. 8 hours later, he said 2 things to me. Okay, one is, you don't understand me. And the second one, I'm not going to repeat on your podcast. And I left that negotiation, and I was like, what on earth happened there?
Yes.
What happened there? And I reflected on it for ages. And it wasn't until sometime later, as I started to get more experience and I started to learn more about human behavior and more about the human mind, that I realized that whole conversation was about me, about what I was going to do.
Right.
What was going to happen in my head. And I often think that we come at difficult conversations from that perspective of, what do I want? What do I want from this conversation? This is all about me.
Yes.
And sometimes it's difficult because the other person isn't like us, because we know we like people who are like us. We converse very easily with people who have a very similar communication style to ourselves.
Yes.
And when we come across people who are perhaps a little bit more upfront, a little bit more assertive, a little bit more emotional, or we know there's going to be an emotional consequence to that conversation, that then creates a barrier. So what generally happens is we have the whole conversation in our head, without even talking to the other person.
Absolutely. So you played this little kind of movie scene in your head of that first negotiation, and this is how it's going to happen, and I'm going to come out with it. And did you come out with it as a result? Did you achieve what you went out?
Not at all.
No, because that person, of course, is thinking, if we stereotypical it, like, fact is, white English woman has no relationship with me, culturally male, and I guess he just saw that and that division, and straight away he made a perception in his mind, and he was like, well, no point in talking to her. So I guess from his perspective, that was what he was thinking. But how do you deal with it now? Like, what was the difference from that first negotiation to the last one?
Yeah.
What
So,
made it easier? Like you said, it was all about them and not about you.
yeah, that's absolutely it. So when I go into a difficult conversation now, I'm very clear what I want from that conversation.
Yes, the outcome.
The outcome, that's exactly it. So negotiation of any sort, which is like a difficult conversation,
Yes,
is think of it as a conversation with a purpose. So have your end goal in mind. What do you want to achieve? And be very clear in your own head about what's going to happen. Never ever do it when you're emotional. So never when you've had a drink.
never make decisions when you're emotional.
Yeah, never make decisions or send like.
Wait like 24 hours. I always say wait 24 hours and sleep on it.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, don't send that WhatsApp. Don't send that email. Press send. Anything like that whilst you're in an emotional state.
Yes.
And plan what you're going to say. And again, we talked about practice. Practice what you're going to say.
Yes.
But also, let's really think about what might be going on for the other person. Let's think about, I'm in their shoes. What's happening there? So, if you're going to go and ask for a pay rise from your boss, so we know at the moment that everybody's a little bit nervous about a recession happening. What's going to happen? Is there going to be more redundancies? And you want a pay rise. So is your timing right here, right now? Now only you will know because you'll work in a company or an organization that you know about. But then if you want to sell that to me, come at it from my perspective. What am I going to benefit from this? So before you tell me all about you and what you want, actually have a conversation with me about what benefit I'm going to get.
Do women make better negotiators than men?
Oh, now that's an interesting question. Okay, so I am going to say that women find it easier to be emotional with other people.
Right.
So they are able to display emotion or ask emotional questions more than men, and that doesn't make them better, because I've taught hundreds of men and they are excellent negotiators. They all go through the same course, but women seem to fear less that emotional connection, where they seem to be able to just look at somebody and feel it more.
Yes.
It's just a nature thing, isn't it? And that's not every woman either. There are some that can't do that at all.
Yes.
And there are some men that are incredible negotiators. Yeah, just from my own personal experience, I would say that, and sometimes the men have to work a little bit harder to get more comfortable with that.
Right.
Okay. In general, that's a very general thing.
Right.
Okay. So, but yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to kind of seeing you again on Clubhouse.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.